I invite Dr. Praveen Chandra to deliver his next talk on the bioabsorbable stents.
So, thank you very much, the chairperson here and Dr. Srinivas Kumar. So, since this morning we have been hearing about little bit about bashing of these drug-eluting stents and how badly they have done. Of course, they did very well for a long time and they're still doing well. But now we are moving on to a new standard. And this is the biodegradable stents, and let me take you through what exactly has been happening. And as you see here, with the changing technology, with the devices, new devices coming in, we have decreased the complication rates quite substantially. And with the drug-eluting stent, we reached a standard, but now we are hoping to reach even newer standards. And of course, in this journey, many devices came in, many devices went away also. And many of you must have seen these devices coming in and going out. But definitely, they were all for good. And some of them are still there, like IVUS, OCT, etc. But now we are moving on to this new technology of biodegradable stents. So what happens? We moved on from balloon to stents. And stents are basically scaffolds. So if you look at this picture, a building has been made, but you don't need the scaffold once the building is made. That is the basic premise on which the the bioabsorbable stents are actually made. So these scaffolds don't need to stay once the treatment is over. So what is the expectation from the stents? It has to be deliverable, low TLR, low restenosis, all that was happening. But the late lumen loss was still there and stent thrombosis was still happening. So basically both affecting the efficacy and safety at some point in time. So even with the second generation drug-eluting stents, or to say third generation drug-eluting stents, the stent thrombosis and restenosis still remained in some numbers. And if you look at the history of stent thrombosis, of course it started declining as the generation of drug-eluting stents improved, but still it was there. And that is why you saw this change in 2006, when suddenly there was a drop in the use of drug-eluting stents with that landmark presentation in the European Society of Cardiology. And that was also attributed not to only stents, also because of the non-responsiveness or slow responsiveness to clopidogrel. And also, even if the stent was functioning, there were patients who had problems. They were still complaining, they were still having problems. And some of it was related to the endothelial dysfunction after sirolimus-eluting stents, as you see here, in post-acetylcholine studies. And because of all this happening, a lot of players started going out of the scene. And as you see here, many companies, the first drug-eluting stent company is already out of the scene. So, which means that it was not the ideal device and a lot of improvements had to happen. So what should be the ideal stent? The ideal stent is, it should do its job and then go away. No scaffold is required, made of biocompatible material to prevent vessel irritation, should have adequate radial force. Adequate radial force, this is very important to prevent collapse of the vessel lumen. And if the stent is gone and has done its job, there is should not be no late thrombosis. The patient can be evaluated by just a simple CT or MRI and would promote the restoration of previously blocked artery and move on to a healthy artery. So a bioabsorbable stent or a biodegradable stent satisfies these requirements and probably will make an ideal stent. And maybe it will be the gold standard. And many companies are working on this at this time. And Abbott Vascular has one of these stents which is now being marketed and is available in India. So I'll take you through the data which we have with the bioabsorbable stent at this time, and whether it becomes a gold standard at this time or not, you will decide, but let me take you through this whole data. Now the most important thing is the radial strength. We have been talking about radial strength quite severely in the last many years, but if you look at the radial strength, we don't need that radial strength. If you go and palpate the artery or the atheroma, it is not a bone-like structure. It is a structure which needs some radial strength. And when it was calculated that the radial strength which are given by these stents is immense, it's not required. 175 millimeter mercury is the estimated difference between the transluminal and intraluminal pressures. So basically, what we require is somewhere at this level. That is the radial strength you require to keep the vessel open. So that is one thing. And second thing is how long you need the radial support. So in the studies, it was shown that the lumen appears to stabilize approximately 3 months after angioplasty. So you don't need the scaffold after about 3 to 6 months' time. So on that premise, we have this bioabsorbable polymer stents, where the stent is made of PLLA and the coating is with a drug, and there is some polymer associated to keep the drug on the bioabsorbable scaffold. These are the data, and this is the evidence from where it all started, and this is the slide from Dr. Patrick Sorais, the final golden tube. We need a tube which has nothing inside and remains as natural as possible. So let me take you first through our experience which we have, and we have done about nearly 300 implants in all kind of subsets, all kind of vessels, including the vein grafts, diffuse lesions, calcified lesions, bifurcations, CTUs, acute coronary syndrome, in-stent restenosis, all kind of subsets. And this data which I'm going to show is some of these representative cases. This is a CTO case, a very documented CTO, right coronary artery, which was recanalized, and thereafter absorbable stent was implanted. As you can see here, once the recanalization was done, it was dilated very adequately with high pressure balloons, and thereafter the stent was implanted in this, giving rise to a very good result. Then in post-bypass situations, as you can understand, it has to be a very chronic lesion, very calcified, rotational atherectomy, followed by stent implantation in the left main artery, going on into this very big ramus circulation. So calcified lesions, post-rota, tortuous arteries, because we had this apprehension whether this bulkier device than the drug-eluting stents would be able to go into these tortuous situations or not, or it will slip off from the stents. So this is a tortuous case, as you can see here, very effectively treated by a absorbable stent and this tortuous lesion. Then acute myocardial infarction. This is a case where there was a reasonable amount of thrombus, which we documented on IVUS also, and this was treated by an absorbable stent with a very good result, and the patient did very well thereafter. And here you see this is the stent in the acute MI situation in this LAD, and after this it was done with a chroma flow using the Volcano system, showing a very nice flow inside this absorbable stent. So acute MI, vein graft situations, again showing reasonably good results. As you see here, this was a lesion in the mid of the graft, which was treated by a absorbed stent implantation. Then multi-vessel stenting, whether we can do multi-vessel stenting or not, we have done about 30 such cases where we have done multi-vessel stenting, including total occlusions. And as you can see here, this was a patient who had a LAD total occlusion, and which was treated with a contralateral injection. We were trying to recanalize this artery. It was recanalized, followed by right coronary stent implantation. Then bifurcation lesions, again, can be addressed using bioabsorbable stents. So all variety of situations, including left main, as you see here in this case, can be treated with the bioabsorbable stent implantation. So the initial apprehension that only simple lesions can be treated, only those lesions where the stent will go easily can be treated, are now being treated very comfortably, including one such case, as you will see here, multiple scaffold. There were 4 scaffolds which were put inside this very diffusely diseased, tortuous, total occlusion of the right coronary artery with an extremely good result, and all these patients are really doing very well. Multiple stents being deployed to reconstruct the arteries. That is one new indication which is there, where neither bypass surgery works very well, nor, I think this slide is not working, and drug-eluting stents makes a long metallic scaffold which will remain there for the whole life. Even if the artery is patent, it will lose its vasomotor functions. So all these indications, in-stent restenosis, as you see here, can now be treated. So in these 300 patients, 300 implants now, we had 2 MACEs, and both were basically because of antiplatelet issues. There's no restenosis. We have follow-up of 7 days to 263 days, and here we have 100% device and procedure success rate. It was easy to track and deliver even in highly tortuous anatomy. Multiple scaffolds can be put end on, and of course this all is only possible if you do a good lesion preparation, good dilatation of the vessels, and then it only leads to good results. Now with this data, is it sufficient for us to replace all our implants to a drug-eluting stents? Probably not. We need to have clinical information also, which has been done prospectively. So this was the first information which came up, which is the absorbed cohort A data, which showed that the events, the MACE events, the TLR, all were extremely low, nearly zero. And the new thing which happened with absorbable stents was that the lumen started expanding at the end of 2 years. And this was again confirmed in the absorbed cohort B studies, where again at 2 years and 3 years, there was expansion of the vessel lumen beyond 2 years and going up to 3 years. We were part of this absorb extend. Many of us sitting here were part of this study, where 1,000 patients were studied and nearly more than 100 patients were taken from India also. Again showing that the results were very good. Even the small side branch occlusion was not an issue in the absorb extend study. The diabetic subgroup again was equally good as the non-diabetic subgroup, and the chances of having a complication compared to a Zymes V stent were lesser than the best drug-eluting stent, as you saw in the last presentations. And this angina outcomes at 1 year, if you compare with the best drug-eluting stents at this time, the everolimus-eluting stents is inferior, and the absorb is better than the best drug-eluting stents at this time. So absorb 2 randomized RCT is going on at this time. The data will be available. And one of the results which has come up from the BVS Expand, which is again an all-comers study, where a lot such indications have been studied, like multi-vessel disease, bifurcation, CTO, ST elevation, MI, etc. And this is a study of 127 patients. And in acute MI also, the BVS STEMI first, all have started now showing up that these results are really acceptable, better than the best at this time, and probably based on this, one can go forward. And once we have this absorb 3 randomized controlled trial also, which is going on, will then establish or confirm that yes, we can replace all drug-eluting stents with bioabsorbable stents. So basically, it is comparable to a best-in-class drug-eluting stents. It restores vasomotor function. Possibility of a late lumen gain, which is the first time seen in this kind of device. Then very low stent thrombosis, no new MACE between 1 and 3 years, and probably we'll have the final golden tube in the patients where we want to have these normally functioning vessels which are open for a long period of time. Then safety and efficacy, as I showed, it has been shown to be very comparable. Low scaffold thrombosis, restoration of vascular functions, and these results will probably establish, and at this time we can say with the clinical experience that probably it will be the stent of the future and will replace drug-eluting stents completely. Thank you very much.